Hi, and welcome to the DIY Photo Organising podcast, focusing on topics to help you with your photo management. I'm Fiona from Photo Helper.
And I'm Chantal from Photos in Order. Hi, Fiona.
Hey.
Hello. Today, we're going to talk about a listener question that, she's not the only one. We hear that, I don't know, we can't say very often, but it happens from time to time, and it's sort of a common question. And we think that it might be useful for others too to get a bit of an answer or suggestions about how to deal with that. And so the situation is the following. Do you want to share, Fiona? Or
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, okay.
So the question or the topic is, if you have lots of family photos or slides or albums, but in this case, this lady was the only child, had no other siblings, did have her own children, but they were not interested at all in any of those photos. And the question really is around, why go to all this effort? Why bother preserving, digitizing, organising, keywording, and all that kind of stuff? If really, as far as she can tell, there's no one that's really interested or available to pass them on to, the care. Why go to all that effort?
It's a good question, because it is a lot of effort.
It is. And in this situation, she's an only child, but this might be, you may have siblings and you may be in this situation as well. They don't really have any interest in the photos or something like that. So I think it's a really good topic to think about, and to just, we thought, give you some options and some ideas on maybe how you could look at this. So this is what we're talking about today. So Chantal, let's start off with going through some of the options on how to just sort of think about this topic, and then we can get into some of the projects that we might suggest.
The more exciting part.
Yeah.
Look, so what is very common also, what she mentioned, the children have no interest. I'm not sure in that case how old the children were, but this is something we hear a lot, my children are not interested in that. But we also see that oftentimes it comes with age. It is normal. I mean, I'm not a child expert, but I consider it as normal that young children or teenagers are not necessarily that interested in the family history. Some might be, but it's probably the exception. And I think that's normal. It's just a stage of life. So, don't despair.
Yep.
There is a good reason to really hope and to assume that it might well happen in later years that your children are going to be more interested. And possibly not your children, but possibly even your grandchildren. I know Fiona and I, we've both seen that happen with clients where it sort of jumped a generation or two, in photos that were passed down and nobody was really interested, but they were kept, somewhere in the attic, in a box, as we all do, or shouldn't be doing, because it's not a good place to store them. But it happens regularly. They're being passed down and nobody does anything with them.
And then they're thrilled when they see them. And this is the thing, we see that they're just so invested in finding out information about these old photos. It's
there is hope. So it can
right.
happen. It can happen that future generations will be interested in that. Yeah.
So with that in mind, with that suggestion, we're looking at, and we'll come to those projects in a moment, but we are saying that could be an option as to why bother going through this process of preserving them, that either your children may show interest later, or future generations may be interested. And so there's some good reasons why some idea of something, not a full-blown preservation project, may be necessary, but some of the other ideas that we've got for you may be appropriate. One of the other things too, Chantel, is even just to ask other extended relatives that, you know, and their children, or just sort of put the feelers out there and see what other interest people have that may want to take on the project either with you, or they may be more interested and have someone that's interested, and they may not know that these photos are there and exist.
Yeah, that's a good point. They might not even know.
Yeah.
You know, and I have that thing really, you know, you got to ask, talk to people.
Yeah.
What's the worst thing that can happen? That they tell you, oh, I'm not interested, don't want to know about it.
Yes.
Yeah, that's not really
the
worst that can happen in life, is it? So yeah, ask around and you might be surprised.
So what's another reason why you were suggesting that maybe consider bothering to do this sort of a preservation project?
Well, I also think it's not always only about people that come after us, our children and other relatives. It's yourself. You know, if you've had a rich life with photos, you know, to document, let's say you've been traveling a lot in your life, but you don't have any children or no husband or other family to pass those photos on to, again, you know, do it for you. You know, create a photo book with your highlights of those trips and the things you've seen, or write down the stories also for yourself. You don't necessarily have to do that for other people. You know, you're somebody too, so you're important. And you know, you've taken those photos to preserve a memory, and that's your memory. So I think that's often really neglected.
I do.
We forget ourselves, and you know, you want to enjoy those photos and the memories. So
so it's another good reason to do that. Another option is, or to even, you know, bother going through that process of preservation, is even if there's not relatives in your own circle that you're aware of, if you were to add the photos to, you know, one of the many genealogy websites or something like this, not just that one copy, but just, you know, as an additional sort of a resource, I think, for future generations. And if you added in the details of who it is and their family history, anything you know about it, you never know where that could be a link in, you know, an extended branch of a tree, a tree somewhere, that could really be a missing piece of a puzzle for somebody. And, you know, that's a really nice opportunity, I think, when you're thinking about what to do with these photos, and if it's worth, you know, preserving and doing anything with them.
And look, also, you don't need to upload 1,000 photos for that, you know, if you select, but we'll get to that in a minute anyway. So, and also, you know, we just wanted to share or say that if this is too hard, maybe, you know, it upsets you, then you're allowed to park it and to deal with it later. You don't have to do that right now. You decide, and if it's too much, put it aside for now.
Yeah, it's a really good point. It's a really, really good point. I think that's important. Just know your boundaries and your limits for yourself. And sometimes these types of things can bring up a lot of emotion. So I think that's just a really good point to make, that that's an option for you to just wait, put it aside, and deal with it perhaps with somebody else or at another time.
Very good. So what projects could we do?
Yeah, moving on to some projects. So some of the ways that we're suggesting that you could tackle this is, if you don't have anyone that you can think of, and you're not you've got thousands and thousands of photos and it's all just too much and you can't see those reasons, if any of those options have resonated with you, then what we would suggest is just reducing down that collection, even to the most significant photos or the most significant events. And that could be, even just a few photos of some relatives at various ages. And, again, looking back at maybe those sort of top 100 photos or something like that. Or it might not even be that many. It might only be 50. It's really, not the number that's important as much as just a selection of some of those significant photos, events, and people. And just looking at the whole project in that way could be a much more manageable way of going about it.
That's right. So also, you don't have to digitize them. Of course, we do recommend it for backup reasons, because those photos are precious, and if they damaged or lost, they're gone. So we're talking about all the photos, in terms of family history and documenting that. If the prints are gone, they're gone. So we do recommend to digitize them. But again, as you just said, Fiona, you don't have to do that with thousands of photos necessarily. If you're not going to do anything with them, it's a good question. Why bother? So be very specific and select those few, and have them maybe scanned. And also that makes it not only more manageable in terms of the work that goes into it, but also financially. It's a huge difference whether you're going to scan 100 precious photos or 6,000.
Yeah, absolutely.
Your wallet will feel that. So even if you do it yourself, so you can totally not scan them. You could instead, pick those few relevant ones, the significant ones, and you could use the traditional album rather than a digital one. And you can add stories and notes into that as well. So it doesn't always have to be digital.
Yeah. And another thing too, if you're looking at what to do and why, if you've made that decision to bother about doing something, to capture some of those traditions, the family traditions that you would pass on to, say, your children, or just even capturing some of those traditions that have happened in the family that you're aware of. I think that it's this idea of preserving those things that are important or have been important or have been of an influence to us in the past, and those sort of bits of information I think are really interesting for others to read in the future. If you don't have children, or your children aren't really interested, then again, other generations or other relatives, extended relatives or friends really would, as we've seen, enjoy hearing those stories and traditions, and it may not necessarily just be with photos. So that could be something to include in there when you're thinking about what to pass down.
Yeah, because it's all about the stories, isn't it?
Yeah.
Another idea is, when we again look at family history, some people like to do like a family history wall, like a bit of a gallery of their ancestors. It's actually something I've got in mind. I've got that in mind for years, and I still haven't done it.
I know. We're the painters without the house painted. Although we're pretty good, but but I mean, I think it's endless projects. That's the thing. We have endless projects.
Yeah.
It's a nice one. Yeah.
So much you can do.
I know.
But I do like that if you've got the space. And I will actually personally, if I can share that, I had in mind to do that, that whole gallery wall sort of thing with little photo frames per person, basically. But I have decided that's just going to be too big. The wall is too small. So what I'm going to do is to design that on a canvas and then have it printed on a canvas, and then it's one big painting.
Beautiful.
Yeah, that's my project. That's what I want to do. So
that's great.
Yeah.
And I think that's good. I think if you have some sort of a vision of what that could be, whether they're individual ones or however you have them placed, and just, I think do a Pinterest search, and there's so many awesome
yes.
ideas and stuff like that for a family history wall, or even a family history photo book. And this could be a project suggestion on how you could do that, and then wherever that ends up, who knows, in years and years to come. So even if the immediate family are not so keen, others may. So a nice family history photo book with some stories and things like that in there is another option as well.
It is. And also, as a last project or idea sort of thing that came up, is if you don't have children, if you sort of the last one in your family and it stops with you, then of course it's also the question, why would I bother? But don't forget, as we mentioned before, yourself first. Do something for yourself that you enjoy with your photos. But you probably have friends and they might really appreciate it. And even if you do have children and other relatives, that you can leave a legacy to, the friends can be part of that. It's not just relatives that it's all about. It can absolutely be other people, and good friends, I'm sure, would appreciate to, if you shared something with them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I really hope that helps. I think it's just always good to be aware of how other people are feeling about their photos. And I think this question that came through was a really good topic that we really hope that you've enjoyed, and just, I don't know, been a little bit reflective on either yourself and your situation, or even somebody else that you know. And, we're so aware that photos can bring up such a whole range of emotions and feelings, and we're just very empathetic and compassionate to that. So I hope that this episode has really given some ideas and just some other ways of thinking about why bother? Why bother going to this process of organising photos? And yeah, there's definitely lots of different ways of looking at it. It doesn't have to be a huge, bigger than Ben-Hur type, approach. It can really it can fit in with whatever works for you and your certain circumstance. So we just, wanted to reach out and explore those options. So we hope you've enjoyed that episode today.
We also have actually quite a few episodes, about 9 or 10 that go well with that whole topic that we discussed today. So on top, of course, is the know your why, our golden rule, number 2. So, and then we've got other topics covered in a variety of episodes, and we'll put all those in the show notes. It's about, what to do with inherited photos, about storytelling and genealogy, the 100 photos to choose. If you want to document your life, I think that's one of our all-time favorites so far. And other practical episodes and tips. So check out that list. There's more for you in that.
Absolutely. And as always, you're welcome to hop on over to our social media websites and our own website. And there's information also there on learning. If you want to do any training and coaching, there's some links there for you to have a look through. But as always, we would love any feedback you've got or any questions that you have, and maybe we could answer them in another episode. So please feel free to reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you. So thanks for joining us today. And as always, happy organising. But from me, it's Fiona from Photo Helper.
And I'm Chantal from Photos in Orders. Thanks so much for tuning in, and happy photo organising. See you.
Bye.